Hello everyone! This is Running on Empty Food Review. Well, hello ladies, gentlemen, and everyone watching. Welcome one and all to this newest edition of the Running on Empty Food Review series. I'm your host, the Report of the Week. Thank you for checking in. A very heavily requested item, I must say, first and foremost. This is one of those items that I got a lot of comments for, and it really does make sense, especially considering it's a new release from McDonald's, although they have released similar items to this, because when you really think about it, this item is actually quite simplistic, but nevertheless, it's from a big chain, so it gets people talking, and it's one of those items that I personally find myself interested in as well. So, McDonald's once again is getting into the chicken strips or chicken tenders game, as they say. They used to be in it for the long run, years and years ago, with the chicken selects, which I was a big fan of, quite frankly. And then ever since they discontinued the chicken selects, they've had chicken tenders here and there that they've had for a limited time, and they'll take them away from you, and they'll bring them back under a different name and take them away, and they'll do that periodically. Well, this time around they have premiered new chicken tenders under the name McCrispy Strips. So they're obviously chicken strips, and they're supposed to be crispy, I would presume, anyway. And with these new chicken strips, they have also released a new dipping sauce as well. Creamy chili sauce, which they actually describe not just as a dipping sauce, but as McCrispy Strip Dip. So I would assume, given the name, and you will see the package, you could verify this yourself, that bad things will probably happen to you if you use this sauce for anything but the McCrispy chicken strips. So don't you go, whether this is good or bad, and we'll find out. Don't you dare, alright? Don't you dare use this sauce for anything except for the McCrispy strips. The packaging, they wouldn't say that otherwise. No way. It's not a chance, right? Or maybe you just could and nothing will happen. That's possible too. That is possible. Okay, the McCrispy strips though, they're chicken strips, they're supposed to be crispy. 3-piece of them, price of $5. No meal, just the strips by themselves, but they're crispy McCrispy strips. And again, you can get though with these the dipping sauce comes complimentary, so that's something at least. Creamy chili. They describe it as being spicy with a little hint of sweetness to it as well. You can get the crispy McCrispy strips in a 3-piece or in a 6-piece. When I was looking at the packaging, I was trying. At first, I thought that was stained, and I think there are grease stains on it. But I was looking at these yellow blotches on the top, and I was trying to figure out what on earth is that. Like, it's part of the packaging, but who knows? Goes right over my head. McCrispy strips, though. And there they are. Two of them. They almost look, but I think it's just based on the contrast, like they're shrouded in darkness or something. I would say it looks crispy. Well, let's try it out. Let's see if it's any good or not. The McCrispy strips, first I'll try them out on their own, and then we shall introduce the creamy chili sauce. Let's try them out, see if they're any good. They're going in. I actually have a little more time than I thought I did, so I'm just going to leave the camera rolling for the rest of the review. So, silly it may look, I have it skewered through the fork simply because these are a bit greasy and oily to hold. This is just personal preference. It really isn't the end of the world or anything. I am happy to say, though, that the quality of the chicken is better than I was expecting, which is good. Like I said, I don't know how well you could really discern anything from the cross section, but the quality of the chicken, as far as McDonald's is concerned, that is on the higher end. You know, it's not that sort of spongy, cheap quality that you would find in some of the lower tier items, such as, you know, the McChicken sandwich, for instance, and even some of the McNuggets, which are all right in their own right, but, you know, it has that sort of spongy quality to it. This, on the other hand, doesn't. This is definitely much fuller, for lack of a better word. And I hope anyway, you were able to see there is a crunchy exterior, you know, and a definite crisp to it likewise, but the proportion of the breading to the actual meat on the chicken is quite favorable as far as actually getting a good amount of chicken for what it's worth. You know, it's not like there's tons and tons of breading just caked on to it, and you know, that gives, of course, the namesake crisp, but at the lack of meat, you know, you actually are able to get a good crisp to it, but at the same time a good amount of chicken. And like I said, it's pretty flavorful, all things considered. One complaint that I always had about the chicken selects, and again this is going back years now, was that the chicken selects were one of those items that they were always very visually appealing. However, they were one of those items that was entirely dependent on a dipping sauce. If you had them on their own, they were shockingly bland. This, on the other hand, these are chicken tenders that are able to hold their own. They are of good enough quality and flavorful enough that even, barring any sort of dipping sauce, they're still good just for what they are. And that's an important characteristic because there are so many items out there that are solely dependent on a sauce to essentially carry it and make it into something good, whereas these tenders, I'm happy to say, are good on their own without the need for any sauce. That's very encouraging, and that's the sign at least of a pretty good product. So the fact that, like I said, it holds its own without any sort of sauce, and it's not bland, it's not overly, even though it is a little oily to touch, any sort of fried food will be for the most part, it's not bad at all. So I'm happy with the quality of these chicken strips, and no complaints. Now, the creamy chili. This is a new sauce, limited time, and again, I was poking fun earlier, but this is what I mean. See how it says McCrispy Strip Dip, as if that's the only thing you're supposed to use for this, but obviously it's been released with these strips in mind. Let's see how it tastes. Well, first, let's see what it looks like. And again, they described it as being spicy, but with a hint of sweetness as well. Orange hue. All right. Silly this may look, I'm just going ahead with it. Going to try out the sauce. All right, let's see how the sauce tastes. The creamy chili dip going in. Not bad either. Can't complain. I would say it's a flavorful, it's a flavorful dipping sauce, and it complements the chicken nicely. The one element of it that I would have to just emphasize here is that it's definitely, because they emphasize, mind you, on their website, right? When you look and see the description of the sauce, they do mention that it's supposed to be a bold sauce. It's supposed to have some spice to it. They definitely emphasize that spicy note. That might even be the first adjective that they use to describe it. They also mention, though, that it is, again, supposed to be on the bolder side as well as on the sweeter side, likewise, with a hint of sweetness, they say. Don't go into this expecting for it to be a really hot sauce. Like, there was a sauce that they released, I believe, with that Minecraft meal, and maybe it's still there on the menu, I'm not quite sure, but that sauce that they released there was genuinely hot. I mean, that was genuinely hot, genuinely spicy, for a fast food place, mind you. Way spicier than what you would normally get. This, on the other hand, again, it's bold, and there is that sweet note, and there's a very tiny hint of spice that sort of lingers on more as an aftertaste. But it's a bold pairing that works nicely with the chicken. But again, don't go into this expecting this to be a hot sauce, because if you do, you will be disappointed. So just go into it understanding that this is more of a bold, fairly savory sauce, a subtle hint of sweetness and a subtle note of spice to it as well, but definitely not any sort of super hot sauce or anything like that. But does it pair well with the McCrispy strips? That it does. So the sauce is still a fine accompaniment. I just wanted to give that little bit of note as a heads up of sorts. So factoring in the quality of the strips, I would rate the McCrispy strips, and factoring in the price, and like I said, the sauce is alright for what it is, but the main focus, of course, is these new strips. Again, they are slightly overpriced for what they are, but they taste good. They're of good quality. I'm happy with them. 8.5 out of 10 is the rating that I am giving them. Like I said, they hold their own, which is a very promising sign. And like I said, they're of good quality, and the sauce is fine for what it is as well. And that's all that I have for you. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm your host, The Report of the Week.